Okay, here we go. This is the 25th of February, 2010, or 2010, as some people prefer to call it. This is your political animal. And I'm going to shock a lot of you today because I'm going to talk about some things that President Obama has done that is some things that are a concern to me. And I know that some of you think that in my sight, President Barack Obama can do no wrong. But such is not the case. I'll be the first to admit that I am a huge supporter of the president, even though I disagree with him on such issues as abortion rights. But I must admit that he has done several things since being elected in November of 2008 that have both baffled and troubled me. The first thing that he did was to have someone design a seal of the president-elect of the United States, which was similar to the actual presidential seal. This troubled me because, in my opinion, it was both unnecessary and invited ridicule from his newly defeated opponents, who already believed the president-elect to be power hungry. To make matters worse, the president-elect shortly afterward abandoned the largely false seal, which only made matters worse because it immediately gave both his supporters and critics the impression that the decision was made in a haphazard rather than in a thoughtful, deliberate manner. The next thing that the president did to cause me to shake my head was when he allowed at least 40 former lobbyists to become part of his administration, even though he had promised to bar lobbyists from working in his administration. According to Timothy B. Carney of the Washington Examiner, more than 40 former lobbyists worked in senior positions in the Obama administration, including 3 cabinet secretaries and the CIA director. Yet in his State of the Union address, Obama claimed we've excluded lobbyists from policy-making jobs, quote unquote. He nominated William J. Lynn as the number 2 man at the Defense Department, even though Mr. Lynn was only 10 months, removed from being a lobbyist for the Raytheon Corporation, which is the second largest defense contractor in the country. It was as though the president was thumbing his nose at one of his most important campaign promises, which was that his administration would be the most transparent in U.S. history, one that would refuse to allow the corrupting influence of present or former Washington lobbyists to in any way taint his administration's agenda. The third thing that the president did, which somewhat troubled me, was when he practically outsourced his healthcare vision to, drum roll here, that's right, the 111th Congress. Now I realize that part of the reason for doing this was to be inclusive toward his caucusing members of both houses of Congress. But in doing this, the president seems to have lost his mojo, even though I personally believe that he has a sincere passion for health care reform, a passion which is largely driven by both his late mother's traumatic experience with her insurance company and his desire to have a defining legislative accomplishment during his first and possibly only, hopefully not, 4 years as our chief executive. As the president has previously stated, when his mother was dying of cervical cancer, she was at the same time being given the runaround about her insurance coverage by her insurance company. I personally believe that if he had taken that passion, born of his dear mother's untimely death, and done more to spearhead the health care debate, his fellow Democrats, and maybe even some Republicans, would have also been more emboldened to think less about their political fortunes and more about what is best for millions of uninsured and underinsured Americans. But unfortunately, the president allowed a deadly combination of congressional trepidation born of this summer's town hall fiascos, some call it vibrant democracy, and the virulent diatribes of radio talking heads to sidetrack health care reform. In the end, he seems to have nearly wasted the first full year of his presidency and is only now directing his full attention to what probably should have been his number one priority after his momentous inauguration, the nation's staggering unemployment rate. There are other smaller things which he has done which troubled me for a while, such as his Special Olympics remark on the Jay Leno show, or his Nancy Reagan as seance participant remark, which he made barely after being elected, or his selection of Tom Daschle as his Health and Human Services Secretary without fully vetting him, or his choice of environmental activist, communist, and 911 truther Van Jones as the White House environmental czar, in quotes. But I realize that when every word that you speak or every action that you take is dissected over and over again by everyone from cyberspace junkies to radio talking head assassins, that which is considered to be relatively arcane speech or actions when spoken or implemented by the average person is often deemed to be major news when spoken or done by the most powerful person in the world. Nevertheless, there is one more thing that the president has done which makes me scratch my head. He did it recently, and I just cannot understand why he did it, because it seems to be one of those things that he sometimes does almost to spite his critics. He recently decided to not post the seal of his presidency on whatever lectern he's using when he's speaking on the road. In my opinion, this is a big mistake because as the president, his seal defines the executive authority with which he is endowed, constitutionally endowed, I might add, and is in essence who he is and shall be for the foreseeable future. It lets the world know that whether or not he is physically in the White House, he is still the nation's chief executive. Removing that seal is akin, in my opinion, to taking the Mercedes-Benz symbol off of that elegant, magnificent car. I thought about this a while ago as I was driving my wife's car to Bible study. As I was driving her 1988 Mercedes-Benz 260E, which runs better than our 20-year newer cars, I would occasionally glance at the hood ornament and think about how for years it has helped to define the elegance of the Mercedes-Benz. Years ago, when my wife had another Mercedes and I would occasionally drive it to work, some students stole her hood ornament while I was inside the building where I was working at the time. When I came outside, the car was still there and functioning, but it seemed as though part of the elegance was missing because of the missing hood ornament. Such it is when I see the president speaking at the lectern, sans his official seal. And let me close by saying that President Obama forgets more in the morning than I know or will probably ever know. So I am not even pretending to be his intellectual equal by any means. But I thought I would share these things with you, for those of you who listen to Your Political Animal or read Your Political Animal on my website, www.shermancrockett.com. I know some of you probably think that